Good morning, everybody. We are live. Welcome. This is the Food Safety Chat. Pull up a chair, join us. We're happy you're here. And my clock behind me is, boy, it's right on today. It was like gonging right before this. So that's a good thing. So if you're new here today, this is the Food Safety Chat. And this is something that we do every Friday here at the Food Leadership Group at this time. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, where my friend Jose is at. And we sit down for about an hour and we talk about all things food safety. And we live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And this is a golden opportunity if you work in quality assurance or food safety to get some of the things answered and those questions out there of things that are concerned about food safety. Because as Jose hears me say time and time again, food safety is not a point of competition. Yeah. All industries who work in a particular field are impacted by the actions of other people. So if you're in the ice cream industry and you see the recalls for Bluebell or you see the recalls of Big Olaf down in Florida, those things impact you. And so you need to be aware of those things. And so, of course, if you're a regular here on the show, and thank goodness for the regulars on the show, we love having you here, like our friend Austin here in Denver. You will recognize the handsome man sitting next to me here in the presentations, and that's Jose Sabal of Sabal Food Safety Consulting. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, Bryan. Thank you for the introduction.
When Joe Lano's on, that's something I love doing to him. I like giving him these like really grandiose titles. So this is Joe Lano, the executive of worldwide food safety auditing or something, and he'll go like this, and it's embarrassing, and I love doing that. It's part of like our parents. Right? They used to love. I think our fathers especially, right, used to like embarrassing us when we were kids. So now it's our turn. Jennifer, nice to see you this morning. Nice to see you. So one of the things that's great about this format, and what you'll see here as well if you're new to this is not a presentation where you go through a webinar and you look at all these different types of information. This is a conversation and this is sharing of information. And today is a special day as well because Jose, so he's like me, he's analytical, he's got this engineering brain, and we love looking at the data. And we'll get into that here in just a sec because Jose, I almost did it. I almost went into the data because I'm excited today for this. But if you're familiar with the channel, join us for a ceremonial drink of your favorite beverage. Jose's got his tea. I've got my periodic table mug, which is awesome. So cheers, everyone. Very good. Very, very good.
Yeah.
So one of the things, Jose, and I think this is we were talking here, getting ready for the chat here this morning. And one of the things that we hear a lot in the consulting world and even in production facilities and things like this as we talk with different people is, okay, Jose, I understand corrective action. Something happened on the floor. We do an investigation. We do some training. We change some procedures. We verify that it's working now. And I've corrected that issue. And then, okay, that's great. And when you look at the procedures and the standards and the different applications out there, preventive comes up a lot, right? Yes. And so people have a lot of questions. It's like, okay, like we all hear about CAPA, corrective action and preventive actions. How do I actually do preventive actions?
Yeah, Bryan, and you know what? You are bringing up a very important topic. Okay, why? And let's go back to basics. Same thing that we do every time that we're together, over here. Let's go back to basics.
Yes.
So any GFSI standard is asking the food companies to develop and implement and maintain and continuously improve a food safety system. And when you go to the official definition in the regulation, FDA, the responsibility of the preventive controls qualified individual, according to the definition, is to develop and apply a food safety system. So it doesn't matter if it's from the regulatory side or from the voluntary side, the GFSI side, we are required to develop systems. So now, what is a system? And I mean, we have been talking about this a lot, Brian.
Yeah.
So if people do not understand exactly what the word system means, how can you develop a system if you have no clue what that is and what is the structure of a system? And yes, I can talk about this with a little bit of an engineering background. I know what is a flowchart. I know the reason for a flowchart. I know what is failure mode effect analysis, or on the other side, how can I use HACCP approach as a risk assessment technique within a system. Many people say, oh, I have a HACCP system. No, HACCP is not a system. HACCP is a risk assessment technique that you use within the scope of a system. You are trying to determine from all of the potential adulterants that could be present in a product, which of those are going to be filth, which of those are going to be potential hazard, and from the potential, you are going to be using the hazard analysis to determine which of those are going to be significant. Those are the ones that will be controlling the food safety plan. Everything else is going to be controlled with the GMPs. And the frequencies of those procedures is what is going to make the difference. So when you have a system in place, I mean, there are hundreds of things why having systems. I'm not going to talk about the most important part of a system because it's not applicable to food safety, which is making money, companies making money. That is the main reason for systems, okay? But let's take that out of this conversation right now and say that you want to make sure that you have a system in place. Why? Because you want to achieve consistency on whatever you do. That is the key. That is the most important thing. And if we look at food safety, you are going to say, well, consistency on what? Consistency in the prevention of adulteration and misbranding, because the goal of the food safety system is defined by the regulators. It's not defined by GFSI.
Beautiful. And the way I visualize this in my mind, Jose, is a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, and this is what you need to identify, is what is my standard? What am I setting up this system to control? And you'll see this with Jose's thought process if you've been here enough on the chat to understand him. At the top, he always identifies what the standard is. The Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, 21 CFR, right? FSMA under 117. What is the standard? GFSI, specifically under GFSI, what standard are you looking at? And how do these things all roll together? And then that cascades down through your processes. What are my policies? What are my procedures? What are my work instructions and my recording forms? And conversely, it works the other direction. If I've got a recording form in my hand and I'm in a plant, and say, well, okay, what are we recording on this form? Oh, we're recording this information for receiving of milk. Okay, great. Why? Well, that's part of our work instruction.
Yes.
Why? Because we are compliant to the pasteurized milk ordinance. Well, why? Right? And you go up the pyramid. And if you can't make those linkages, there's something not right. There's something not right. And it's always super important that you go back to that, because within quality assurance and food safety, right, we're building these hierarchies. And this extends through the entire company, to your point, right? This is how companies make money and support the processes you use to produce product. And that is super important to understand. You will be successful in this field if you understand that basic cornerstone of what we do.
Basic structure, Brian. And look at this. So you started your question and the conversation here with corrections and corrective actions. And I said, okay, let me go back to system first. Tell you that the main objective of a system is to achieve consistency on whatever is a reason for that system, in our case, in food safety. So we need to understand what is the scope. And simply, I mean, you can go to the food law in 21 USC 9, and you're going to find the reason there. But if you go to the preventive control for human food, or the dietary supplements, or the seafood HACCP, and it doesn't matter which one you go, they all have copy and paste from the law. And they're saying that everybody must be working under sanitary conditions all of the time, because the product, if people is not working under sanitary conditions, it doesn't matter if the product is adulterated with filth, or adulterated with something that is going to be injurious to health, a hazard.
Yeah.
The product is going to be adulterated. So if whatever product that is being made contains, oh my goodness, a very tiny portion, and I'm going to be an extreme, of course, very tiny portion of food grade grease, the product is adulterated. Yeah. Because food grade grease is not food. Exactly. That is not part of the formula of the product. You don't have in the list of ingredients food grade grease, is not there. So that is consistency. That is the main reason for systems. Now, reason number 2 is that basically it's going to be impossible, Bryan, to achieve consistency 100% of the time. We will have deviations, deficiencies, problems. You name it. We are going to have evidence that we're not achieving the intention of our system. We're not achieving the working under sanitary conditions all the time. As soon as we identify that, we need to go through the second reasons of a system, which is the continuous improvement.
Yes.
And continuous improvement is exactly what is in the official definition in ISO 9000, the words for ISO systems, management systems, and so on, is that section where ISO defines what is a correction, what is a corrective action, and what is a preventive action, because corrective actions and preventive actions are not the same.
Right. And so that's an important point. So let me reflect this back to you, because essentially what they're saying is this. Okay, fine. You've created a system. Wonderful. It cannot be static. Everything is constantly changing. A good example for me, and I track this in locals whenever I see these come up, and I'll put a link here later if you're not familiar with locals, is the world of food safety is constantly changing. A year ago, would I have thought about eating enoki mushrooms? Sure, why not? Put some enoki mushrooms on your salad. Those look great. Those little cute little mushrooms. Well, now I know that they are a major source of contamination for listeria. Right? I see recall after recall after recall. And I'm like, whoa, okay. Until this industry figures out how to grow enoki mushrooms without listeria, I'm not going to eat those. And the only way you can see those things if you're looking outside and seeing what is going on. I had a very, very good auditor earlier in my career, Jose, who came in and assessed my HACCP plan at a company I was running quality for. And he said, Bryan, this is really good. I like what you're doing here. Let me ask you a question. How are you letting your production facilities know of new threats and new trends? And I was like, right. And man, that just went into my brain. And ever since that point in time, I send out information and share what I can. It's why we're here today. It's because of him. Okay. And I'm eternally grateful for him for doing that. And that preventive piece is so important. And a lot of times people are confused. And so what we're going to kind of get in here today, I think this is a good way to kind of jump to what you've done. Jose has done a ton of work here on analyzing data. And we're going to share this with you. And we're actually going to show you how you can do this yourself. So are you ready, sir?
Yep. Go ahead.
Here we go.
Okay. So, Bryan, what we are going to see and is an analysis of the 2022 data, and I also have information from 2010. Okay.
So a little weird thing that people always kind of get messed up on, if their numbers are different from FDA. FDA's calendar year is not January to December. Their year ends in Q3. So September, October, November, December that's a new year, right? So they're off a little bit from everybody else. Yep.
So one of the things that I would like to share with you guys is that the data that I'm using here, I pulled the data from FDA. So is that a reliable source? I will say yes. It's coming from FDA. But again, I'm using the data, and in a very unique way, you are going to see that. I believe that what is important is not the data itself, is how we use it and the information that we pull from them. So what I believe is the trends that we can see from the data is the value here. Okay. So the first thing, Bryan, here, and this is what I share in that post that I put in LinkedIn. Human food violations. So I went through the data and I said, okay, bring me only human food violations. Mm-hmm. And then I organized that. And when I group by category, and the categories are here, FSBP, preventing control for human food, dietary supplements, seafood HACCP, juice HACCP, and then 108, the emergency permit, 113, low acid canned food, 114, acidified food, and 112, which, by the way, is new because it's part of FISMA, that is the produce safety rule. Okay, so that's the reason why we have these numbers here. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just commenting how nice this is. Very good.
Yeah, so I just grabbed all of the violations in 2022. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I calculated percentages because again, the numbers are not that relevant. What I believe that is important is the percentages, how they are distributed among all the violations that the FDA raised. So as you can tell, basically 1/3 of all violations, because the numbers are basically, these two numbers are basically the same.
Yeah.
1/3 of all violations were preventing control for human food, and the other third is the food foreign supply verification program.
Yep. Hey, Jose, quick question for everybody. Please ask Jose questions as we're going for this, just so that we're clear for everybody. So when FDA says a violation, what's a violation?
Oh, perfect. That is, thank you very much for the question. So the regulations have a lot of requirements, exactly the same as BRC and FSSC and IFS and SQF, whatever code, they have a lot of requirements. When someone is not in compliance with any of the requirements, that is a violation. It's a violation of the requirements of the regulation. We good?
Perfect.
Okay. So in other words, in GFSI language, that is going to be a nonconformity. Okay. So we have, again, about 1/3 of all of the violations raised are raised against the preventing control for human food. Mm-hmm. And the other third about FSBP. Okay. So keep in mind one thing, which is what I believe that is important to discuss when you see this kind of, distribution of violations. Preventing control for human food, Bryan, is the manufacture of food. Okay, not all, because we have seafood and dietary supplements and juice and other stuff that requires eventually a combination between the preventing control, some sub-parts of the preventing control, and the other regulation. Mm-hmm. However, the foreign supply verification program is just going through the hazard analysis of the products that will be imported. And then if the suppliers, which most likely are subject to the preventing control for human food, need to develop a food safety plan because they are controlling a hazard, the FSBP importer located in the United States is supposed to say, oh my goodness, this product has a hazard that is controlled by the supplier. I need to approve the supplier according to not GFSI approval. I need to approve the supplier to prove that that supplier is in compliance with US regulations.
Yes.
That's how you approve them, not by having a GFSI certificate. Mm. That is not the way. So you need to approve the supplier and then set up what is called in the FSBP regulation a verification activity. The verification activity is fundamentally focused to prove that at the time of receiving entry into the United States, the food that is coming in is not adulterated or misbranded.
Right. So let me reflect this back to you so everybody's clear on this. So I'm a U.S. company, and I am buying cocoa powder from a company in Africa. And a known hazard associated with cocoa is salmonella. Right? So FDA comes to me in the U.S. and says, okay, well, are you buying any foreign products? Yes, we're buying cocoa from Africa.
Hold on, Bryan, let me interrupt you for a second. Yes. I'm sorry. That is not going to work like that, because as soon as the product shows up at port, FDA already has, actually is part of the Custom and Border Patrol thing. We need a prior announcement that the shipment is coming. The FDA already knows what is coming in, who is going to be the owner or consignee of the product, and who is the manufacturer of the product.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I skipped a step there, right? So FDA goes into the Customs and Border Protection, sees that I'm bringing in cocoa, and then they contact and say, hey, listen, how is this hazard being controlled? And there's some really good information coming on that. So I don't want to go any further than that. So.
Okay. So what is going to happen? If I'm the FSBP importer and I'm bringing in the cocoa, and I know that salmonella could be present, well, let me tell you that most likely the source of that salmonella is environmental. It's not from the cocoa beans. Right. The cocoa beans already went through the process of roasting and, pulling the flavor and taking care of any hazard that may happen in the bean itself. Most likely, the source of that salmonella that could be present in that product is from the environment. So what is my responsibility as the FSBP importer? Oh, I need to gather documentation and approve the supplier to make sure that they are in compliance with the Preventive Control for Human Food, which says that whenever someone is producing a product that is ready to eat, exposed to the environment, before packaging, they must set up, they must identify it as I don't want to say significant hazard, even though that is a language. They need to identify salmonella as a hazard that requires a preventive control in the hazard analysis. And the preventive control should be a sanitation, cleaning and sanitation procedure, an SSOP, to take care not only of the food contact surfaces that are part of the exposure from the product being treated for any hazard from the field, I'm going to say, until the product is packaged. So it's not just the table or the tool or the equipment or the dryer, which the dryers are very hard to clean. It's about everything that could be there. So it is possible that in the hazard analysis of that foreign supplier in Africa, there are 2, 3, 5, 6 steps where the product is exposed to the environment. And at that point, FDA, the regulation says, besides making sure that you clean frequent enough, you're supposed to have an environmental monitoring program. But everything, Bryan, is about documentation, because I'm in the United States, I'm not watching their operations. It's about paperwork. So FSBP is basically gathering the right information about the suppliers and gathering the right information about the not adulterated or misbranded status of the food that is coming in.
Very well said. I have nothing to add.
Okay, so as you can see in this slide, we have basically 2/3 of all of the violations for Preventive Control for Human Food and FSBP. Again, like we mentioned, FSBP is just checking that the suppliers are in compliance with the Preventive Control for Human Food. And I'm saying human. If we're importing some, I don't know, tomatoes from whatever, Mexico, and these guys are subject to the produce safety rule, the FSBP is going to somehow prove that these guys have the proper controls according to the regulation that is applicable to them. Okay. So after that, we have the dietary supplements, and then the seafood HACCP, and then there is a very tiny, light blue section here that is for everything else. Juice, emergency permit, low acid canned food, acidified food, and the produce safety rule. So the big majority of everything is about Preventive Control for Human Food and foreign supply verification program. So what I did in this slide is, well, I'm going to use only the section for preventive controls. Mm-hmm. And I would like to separate all of the violations that are related with the GMPs, Super B, from all of the violations related with Subpart C, the food safety plan. Mm-hmm. Okay? And when I did that, well, 72% are violations of GMPs. And 28%, that's a third, basically, of all of the violations are food safety. So at this point, when I was doing this, I was thinking a bit about if the definition of adulteration is working under insanitary conditions, okay, and you may work under insanitary conditions and you are going to receive a violation against GMPs, this 72% is evidence that people is not in compliance with the regulation.
Right.
Now, in GFSI, you are going to receive most likely a minor nonconformity for anything like this. But according to FDA and the definition of insanitary conditions, this is what is called a prohibited act in the law. And anyone that is doing this blue thing, the GMP violations, is considered a criminal.
Let that sink in. What Jose just said. Right? And again, right, this goes back to me, Jose, is the pyramid, right? If you aren't doing a good job at the basics, hand washing, facility design, control of all of these type of things that GMPs are looking at, your food safety plan is not going to be effective.
Yeah. And by the way, Bryan, and this is another thing, I'm not talking now about the specific regulation or the specific GFSI program that is being used. But look at this. If you design a system, okay, and the scope of your system is the prevention of adulteration and misbranding, because you must work under sanitary conditions each and every single second of operations, whenever you identify a violation, deficiency, observation, problem, or so, with one or more of the controls that you have in place for any adulterant that you may identify, that is an indication that your system is not working. You don't have a system.
Right.
Even with a GMP failing, you don't have a system.
Mm-hmm. And this is why, and this goes back to some analysis that we've recently done here on the chat for warning letters, right? How are FDA warning letters structured? They always list the law. Here is how you're violating. Here are the regulations. Here are the food safety plan and GMP failures associated with this letter.
Yeah, exactly right. So this is very important for everybody to fully understand what is a typical trend. The typical trend is that we are not doing a good job as a general approach in maintaining the facility, the GMPs, cleaning, sanitation, calibration, employee training, disease control, hand washing, hairnets, and so on in good condition, in an effective manner.
So Sanal, I see that you're typing a comment here. By the way, good to see you. It looks like she's got a two-part question here. So we'll address that when you get that second part in.
The product, they produce entries that contain meat and vegetables. They have told, number one, USDA is over FDA, and two, they do not have to document cooking temperature for vegetables such as a raw broccoli. I try showing them FDA Appendix 1, known pathogen for broccoli that need control in play, cooking for sensitive. Okay. So look at this. So now we need to define first, and you're in a very unique position there, because it seems that your facility is actually regulated by FSIS, Food Safety Inspection Service, which is an agency in the Department of Agriculture, to make it easier. So why they are saying that FDA has nothing to do there? Because as soon as a product has, if I'm not wrong, more than 3% in weight of any product that is meat or meat products, poultry or poultry products, egg products, and also the catfish, siluriforms. Those products are regulated under FSIS regulations. You need to follow FSIS regulations. So most likely when you're saying that this is a produces entrails that contain meat and vegetables, most likely the weight of the meat surpasses that 3%. And that means that the actual regulation applicable to you is in 21 CFR. Oh my goodness. No, not 21. It's 9 CFR, which is the regulation for FSIS. It's a different regulation. Now, I would like to say one thing, Sonal. The definition of adulteration and misbranding is a definition that is in the law, not in a specific regulation. So whenever we define what is adulteration and what is misbranding, that is going to be applicable exactly the same way, no matter if you produce products under FSIS or under FDA regulations. The scope is the same. Okay? So what I'm going to say, I'm going to match what you're describing here with something that I heard in a seafood conversation. If you're making a product that is seafood, regulated by FDA, except for the catfish, but everything else is regulated by FDA. Well, what about if you're making a seafood soup and you're adding some, chicken broth, and you're adding some broccoli and some carrot, whatever? Are you not taking care of those hazards just because you are following the seafood hazard regulation? No, you need to take care of those hazards. It's exactly the same. You are going to be analyzing which are the hazards of the products that you are receiving, the raw ingredients and the raw material ingredient, whatever. And then you are going to have a plan on how you guys are going to be or cooking the product and taking care of that hazard, or making a product that is raw that requires instruction for cooking. And those instructions for cooking must be validated to cook any potential hazard that could be present from any of the ingredients, not just the meat.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets very interesting when you have these. I described them as turf wars, right? Who owns what, right?
So in this slide, Brian, I was trying to say, okay, let me concentrate on food safety. Okay. So when the FDA is raising observations, I would like to separate them by how many observations we have for the food safety plan, which is 117.26, how many observations for hazard analysis, 117.130, how many observations for preventive controls, 117.135, and corrective actions, 117.150. Okay? And out of all of the food safety issues, basically 2/3 around is because of those 1, 2, 3, 4 items. Okay, so what is remaining here? It was not easy to gather the data and say, when we're talking about preventive controls, are we actually talking about monitoring? Are we talking about the criteria that we define? Are we talking about the corrective action itself? Because all of these management components apply to the preventive controls. But when I saw the data of the violation was talking about 117.135. So it's basically, you do not have the right preventive controls here. And most of those observations, when I'm looking at the 483s, Brian, is FDA is making a big deal. The thing about producing ready-to-eat product exposed to the environment before packaging. And they're citing a lot of companies saying, you are not identifying the environmental hazard as a significant hazard in your hazard analysis, and you do not have the right sanitation preventive control.
Right.
Okay. So that is, again, a trend that I can see according to this data. Okay, let me go to the next one. So now, those are the charts that I published in LinkedIn. But I have been following all of these violations for years, since 2010. So what I did, because I mean, it's going to be basically very difficult to analyze everything. So I said, you know what? I'm going to grab the first 5, the biggest 5, and I'm going to compare those and see what's happening. Okay.
Yep. And I think that's an important point for everybody, because part of, because we're technical people and we're analytical and we're seeing this here today, is that apply the Pareto principle, right? Focus on the big things.
Yeah.
And then worry about the little things, 80-20. Look at the big things. That's exactly what Jose has done here.
Yep. So since 2010, you can tell the dates over here. As you can see, in 2011, the FDA had
what happened then?
A little bit below 18,000 violations as a total. Wow. Okay. Right now, guys, we are here. We are a little bit over 6,000. But there were at some point 18,000, almost 18,000, 17,000 and something. Yeah. Now, you know what was very weird, Bryan, is that it doesn't matter what is the number of violations. You can see that if I trend this red line, you're going to have a line going down.
Yeah.
Okay. However, the amount of the first 5, the number of violations of the first 5 remains basically the same. It doesn't matter what is the total amount of violations. That was weird.
Yeah.
Because that means that basically within the first 5, and maybe, this is data, right? So maybe it's the first 6, or maybe the first 12, or maybe the first 13, and I'm just finding this because I'm analyzing the first 5. Mm-hmm. But when analyzing the first 5, you can see that basically the percentage of the number of violations in the first 5 is, static, is basically not changing. Mm. FDA will always find those issues all of the time.
Right. And definitely something to consider as well is the dip in the total violations in 20 and 21. What happened in 20 and 21? Right. FDA was not going to facilities. They were locked down for COVID, just like everybody else. So that drop right there is artificial.
Yes. Well, actually, it's not in this slide, but you know what? It's in the next one. Hold on. There you go. So what I did in this chart, I pulled the data, and look. If you look at the years here, 2016, we have FISMA. FISMA started.
Yep.
Okay. And then 2020, 21, and 22, we have COVID.
Yeah.
Now, everything that is green are violations against GMP. And everything that is red is violations against food safety. Now, I was very curious. Bryan, look at this one. 100%. In 2011, in the first 5, watch out. These are the first 5 violations. Okay. No food safety issues. In the first 5. Really? And then in 2016, FISMA, and 2017, no food safety violations. What about that? That's weird.
Yeah.
It's very weird. Now, what is more is that you can see I will say a trend for food safety issues. It's about, I'm going to say, 20% as a kind of a very, static, very even, I'm going to say. But what happened in 2021? Look at this.
Yeah.
Most of the first 5 were against food safety and not GMPs. But if you take from 2060, from FISMA, okay, and you try to draw the trend, and of course, I'm trending the red, so it goes down. Right, yeah. But the trend is indicating that the FDA is focusing more on food safety. And they're raising a little bit less GNPs, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
It is going to be easier. I mean, the trend makes sense because it is easier to fail in the GNPs than to fail in the food safety program. Okay, it's easier, yes, but you can still see the trend here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Very interesting.
it's not that big, but there is a trend. And if I go back to the previous slide, not this one, hold on, to this one. Why I cannot?
Did I let me go backwards?
Hold on. Let me go back. There you go.
There we are.
Okay, so if I go back here, okay, 17,000 and something violations in 2011. And it was going down, it was going down, it was going down. 2016, FISMA, keep going down, keep going down. So 20, basically 90, end of 1920, 21, 22, COVID. Okay, COVID. So you may say, okay, so there is a reason why. Remember that FDA inspections are being performed 99.9% of the time unannounced and on site.
Right.
So we have a COVID. Okay, so it's not going to happen. But you know what? Look at 2022. Even that we were still a little bit with COVID, okay, the change between this number and this one is basically 50% more. I'm not sure if you guys received the last, one of the last communication from FDA, but they are asking for a budget for $7.2 billion for the next year.
Yes.
Okay, so that is number one, Bryan, but that is not all. The other thing is that last year, during the annual conference of FFTCA, FDA was there, and they say that they're going to start using the regulatory remote assessments, RRAs.
Mm-hmm.
And RRAs are voluntary because the law and the regulation do not have a mandatory requirement for FDA to do this.
Right.
But guess what? You receive an email from FDA saying, we're going to be performing an RRA in your facility. Are you going to say no?
Right.
No, you're going to say, well, okay, let's do it. Mm-hmm. So my expectation for the following years is that this trend is going to continue going up. FDA is going to keep on performing more on-site inspections. They're going to be performing a lot of remote regulatory assessments, especially on foreign suppliers, guys, especially foreign suppliers. You know, it's easier to just send them an email and say, we're checking your facility in South Africa for the cocoa powder. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, let's get into a Zoom meeting or team meeting or whatever, you know, show me the documentation, show me your hazard analysis, show me that you are in compliance with U.S. regulation because you are selling your products in the United States.
Yes. And FDA during COVID, they figured out how to do remote audits efficiently. And they can do it. And then, you know, the senior leadership at FDA and the regional directors all said, wow, look at this. I can get 10 audits done for the same price as one on-site audit. And I've got all these requirements under the regulation for FSMA to perform audits, right? And every year it's like more.
Yep.
So they're saying, good tool.
And here is the evidence, Bryan. FSBP, which is a remote audit. You know, all of these FSBP violations are remote.
Yes.
Okay, so, well, 1/3 of all of the violations is already telling us that this is going to happen. So we need to be ready.
Yeah, and I have had clients who've gone through this, and they just get a phone call. Hello, this is FDA. We'd like to review these records from Customs and Border Protection. Send us your documentation.
Yep. Okay. So one thing I did, I said, okay, can I try to normalize the data to see if it's more significant in a different way? And what I did is I just said, In a year, we have 52 weeks. If we take out Saturdays and Sundays, we are going to have left about 260 days, about, okay? So what I did is I divided the violations per working days every year to see if, in an effort to try to find how frequent are these violations happening on a daily basis. And yes, because there were so many, so many violations in 2011, of course, that we have a peak there. But besides that, you can see that the trend is quite stable, except for the last 2 years. During COVID, this is increasing now.
Interesting.
It's amazing what is happening. And keep in mind that this is in the first 5 violations, okay? So I'm not taking into consideration the entire thing. And well, that was the last one.
Beautiful, beautiful. A lot of work, Jose. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, it always takes time because you select it, you have an idea, you look for the data, organize the data, and Excel is tricky sometimes in the way that you're organizing. Then you create a graph and then you start thinking about the graph and say, hey, is this meaningful? Is this going to make sense? And you start questioning yourself and say, no, this is not meaningful. So trash. And then go and find a different way and then try to combine things. And well, it is what it is.
Well, I think, right, if we kind of back up and look at the bigger picture here, right, what we've kind of gone through right here is this is an example of using preventive actions, right? Going out and looking into the future and saying, what's coming? What are the trends? What do I need to be worried about that I may not be thinking about today, right? It's reactive versus proactive. And that's always a big challenge, right? And we need to, as quality assurance and food safety professionals, carve out time for this, right? We need to think about these things. If we run around fighting fires all day long and we go home from our jobs and go, oh, okay, I'll do this again tomorrow. That's not your job, right? Yeah. Getting caught on this hamster wheel is not your job. Your job is to see it coming and sidestep it, right? And part of it is getting this information to the organization. And so Jose has generously offered, if you want these slides for your benefit, his email's right there, right? Oh, there we go this way. Whoop. His email's right there. Email Jose and he'll send you this presentation, which is fantastic. Thank you, Jose. That's very generous.
It's a pleasure.
And so part of this, right, is there's an interesting rule in negotiation, is that people are convinced by things that are in writing. And if you go to other departments in your company and you say, oh my goodness, trends in food safety issues with the FDA are going up, and then you walk away, people are like, yeah, okay. But if you go into your boss's office or the head of operations or another person, you say, I've got some stuff to show you. Let's look at these graphs. Let's look at these charts and let's talk about these. And they can see that information. That is much more persuasive, right?
Incredible.
And it's a way and a tool, right? Because part of this, and we talk about this a lot, Jose, is the technical skills and attributes that we have in what we do are important. But being able to communicate that information to people who aren't involved in this on a day-to-day basis is critical. You need to be able to go to the procurement department and say, hey, listen, right back to our cocoa example, we need to make sure that we're really buttoned up on our foreign supplier verification because look at this. FDA is really interested in this and they're doing remote audits. We need to prepare. We need to do our own audits to get ready for FDA to make sure that we're okay so that we're not surprised. And work with them to help them understand that, right? It's critical, absolutely critical for companies. And this is why I think this is a big reason, Jose, that we hear this question as consultants all the time. Why aren't recalls going down? Why aren't violations going down, right?
This is a root cause.
This is right, exactly. And part of this, right, is doing what everybody on this chat here today is doing, right? You're looking forward, you're investing your time, and you're helping to increase your skill set to help your organization, to help your company, to help your industry understand these trends so that you can get ahead of them. Super, super important. Now,
So, Bryan,
sorry, please.
To kind of close the loop on your opening statement about corrective actions, and we were saying just corrective actions. Okay, so let me finalize. I'm going to say refresh it because we have discussed this before. Finalize how do you deal with a deviation, okay? Because it's not just about corrective actions. We need to understand within the scope of a system, what is a correction, what is a corrective action, what is a preventive action, okay? So every time that we have deviations, deficiency, problems, and so on, we need to fix the problem. That is a correction. And the fixing of the problem has two components. You need to take care of the product that was affected by the deviation of the process, because that product is now the product, okay? And this is a product, a mathematical product, this is a multiplication, is the outcome of working under insanitary conditions because you had a deviation.
Yeah.
Okay? Because of that, you need to take care of the product. And of course, you need to take care of the process and bring the process back to compliance. Okay? Mm-hmm. At least momentarily, because most likely you're going to be working on, doing something to prevent that from happening again.
Right.
So once you're done with the correction, which has those two components, it is the responsibility of any company to go through corrective actions. And what is a corrective action? Is when you look for the root cause, or 99% root causes, because 99% you're going to have more than one. Mm-hmm. You're going to be looking for the root causes. And once you have all of the probable ones, you're going to try to analyze them, eventually group them or not group them. And by doing that analysis, you are going to come up with a plan on how to fix those root causes. Mm-hmm. Okay? The root cause analysis and the prevention of reoccurrence is a corrective action. The correction is not part of the corrective actions. It's a separated thing. Now, hold on. FDA, you go to the definition, FDA says that whenever someone is going through corrective actions, they need to correct the problem and then do something to prevent reoccurrence. So what the FDA is doing is grouping the official definition of those words into one. And I'm going to say, that's okay, I can live with that. Mm-hmm. But if you go to GFSI and you see statements like, oh, this is my corrections and preventive actions. And you're going to say, hold on, because a preventive action is not a corrective action. They're different. Right. What is the difference? That if you look at trends like the ones we are using today, and you identify that in the future something may happen to you because of the trends, you do not have an current actual deviation or problem in your system. Your system is working fine. It's working exactly as designed. The thing is that it is possible that in the future, you may have a violation, deficiency, deviation, you call it as you wish. Yeah. And that is going to trigger the need to find the root causes of that potential issue and then do something to prevent the occurrence, not reoccurrence, because it never happened. That is the difference.
Very important. Very well said, right? It's a complicated topic, right? Because these things kind of weave together and intertwine, and sometimes it's hard to pull apart. So that's very good. One of the things, Jose, for me, for some reason, I'm not getting comments. I only got like the first half of Sonal, so I don't know if there's are there any other comments in there that we need to address, or?
So, you know what I noticed, Bryan, normally when I'm chatting with you, I open Chrome because the StreamYard is not working in Safari. But I also open LinkedIn in Safari. And I have not seen your notification saying Bryan is alive in LinkedIn. So I believe that you are not streaming into LinkedIn today. Okay. I believe so.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, email us directly and we'll get to those. And after the live stream is done, I'm going to issue a corrective action to StreamYard to find out why their comments aren't working.
Okay.
So that's good. So let's try a little experiment here. And so part of this, right, is what we want to do here in the food safety chat is help teach people how to do these things for themselves, right? And analyze this information, right? Because that becomes much more focused on what you're concerned about. So let's try this here, and I'll say it verbally as well as typing here in the chat. So there's a really cool tool out there called the FDA dashboard for recalls. Let's see if that pops up.
Yep.
Okay, good. And FDA also has a gigantic database that they put out for every fiscal year called the FDA Inspectional Observations. So those two guys are great. The other one you hear me talk a lot as well is Food Industry Council. Sean Stevens, who was on the show here recently, has taken money out of his own pocket and created this tool for us to use for free. So anytime I can call this out and thank Sean for doing that, I do that.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. So Food Industry Council, and that's like a lawyer, COUNSEL.com/recalls. I'm taking the HTTP off and we'll see if it likes that, because sometimes this thing is squirrely. So there's that guy. And those are amazing tools to start, right? And there's all kinds of other things. Another tool out there, and you hear me talk about this every week, is free, is locals.com, which is a really cool site. I'm so, this is growing really nicely, and I'm really happy that we're building a community here, Jose. So locals.com, and you can look for the Food Leadership Group, and you will find me or my name, Bryan Armentrout, and you can sign up for free. And 2 or 3 times a week, I go through all the information out there that's interesting to me. And again, right, this is how this is personal. These are the things I see. Oh, another enoki mushroom recall. Boom, that goes in the report, and it goes right to your email, which is awesome. So definitely take a look at that. Another thing out there that's taking place here, a lot going on, Jose, is I'm with Dr. Marshall of Eurofins and 2 other amazing guests for a webinar coming up on the 23rd on preparing for and responding to contamination events, right? So even in the title of that, preparing to and responding to, right? Responding to corrective actions, preparing for preventive actions, right? It's right there. So I'll put the link to sign up. It's free, right? So thank you very much on that for Food Safety Tech for sponsoring that. These guys are awesome, and we'll see if that kicks out or not. So fingers crossed on that. Either way, email me, right? And I can send you the link, or just look for it online too. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a good one. Wow, lots covered today, Jose. Very interesting. Any closing thoughts you'd like to share with people after I went through that litany of stuff?
Well, not really. I mean, I would say that we need to understand the basics before we go deep. Okay, so developing a food safety system without understanding what is a system, with understanding what is an element of a system, what is a requirement, comparing requirements, understanding what is an integrated management system to integrate FDA, for example, with GFSI, because the requirements are not the same, understanding what is a correction, what is a corrective action, what is a preventive action, and those kind of things. I mean, understanding the regulation. What is the definition of the word food? Yeah. You're developing a food safety system. So what is the definition of the word food? Because it's not what you're going to say, something that I'm going to eat. Well, you can eat rocks. You put a rock in your mouth and you're eating rocks. Is that food? If you go to California and you go to one of these marijuana shops and you buy a brownie with marijuana, is that food? No, it's not.
Right.
That is a drug. So you need to understand exactly what is the official definition of the word food, which is in the law and is not in GFSI.
Beautiful. Boop. Nice little type a little bow. Close it off. So again, thank you, Jose. Every time I love having you on. You are just a fire hose of information. So thank you very much for sharing that with our audience. I know everyone here greatly appreciates it. So that's going to bring a close to this week's Food Safety Chat. And again, thank you for investing and helping to improve food safety. These actions and things that we're doing, these graphs that Jose are showing, right? This is what is bringing those numbers down, right? Bringing those violations down. is these type of activities. So thank you very much for doing that. And we will see you back here next Friday for the next food safety chat at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. And we'll bring on our next amazing guest and we'll do this again. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend. Jose, my friend, thank you. And you have a great weekend too.
Thank you for the invitation, Bryan.
Oh, thank you always. Have a good one, everyone.